Usually we put a step up there for it. It doesn't. No, I'm not going to do that long. So.
Ready? Good afternoon. Welcome back to the WVGS membership meeting for another year. Before the meeting started, we hope, and during the break, we hope that you will buy your 50th anniversary celebration tickets. They are available back at the back table. Charlie, where are you? Charlie has lots of them, I'm sure. Oh, that's right. He went to take some time today to join the SIG or begin a class. There's a list of those around. Get your lucky raffle ticket. Peggy and friend will be happy to sell them to you. This has not been a good day. Check out the used book sale that's here. And Charlie is gone because he went to rescue the pigs. But when they come back, we hope you'll put some change in the piggies. And as you take break time, make sure that you introduce yourself to someone that you do not know. That's the way to be friendly, is to do that. I've tried to do that today to some of you. I haven't gotten all the way around, but I will. And now what's happened this summer? We had a lovely tea. How many of you were at the tea? Let's see hands. Sure. There was delicious food. There were some new friends. There were pretty hats. And thank you, Peggy and your friends, for a lovely tea. What happened this summer? Well, the library parking lot has a smooth new surface with bright new striping so you know where to put the car. The library sidewalk is a new surface and it's safe walking now. And thank you to Stephanie and the building committee for that improvement. What else happened this summer? Well, the library books have been rearranged on the shelving. Warning, I found this out the other day. Your favorite book may not be in the same place that you've always found it. Thank you, Sandy, and your friends for the hard work there. And the November class is coming up. Barb, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I do.
All right, come on. I get them listed.
Okay, we're going to switch around somehow.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to give you the September and the October classes. I don't think I listed any November ones. Oh, I do have one. So there's a novice genealogy class, which is offered just about every month by Barbara Stenberg. It's usually on a Friday. Kathy Gallagher is doing one in October on basic writing for genealogy. I have a DNA painter workshop, which is basically an overview of Painter. It's not in-depth on how to analyze your DNA. It's basically what Painter has to offer you. And that's in October. And then our first vice president, former president, Stephanie Sparks, and our and Connie Sheets have a 3-session virtual class, Family History, How Do I Get Started? This is intended for beginners and some not so beginners also who need some updates or could benefit from it also. My daughter is over there with the schedules for the SIGs and the class schedule that we have so far for this year, including through spring 2023s are on that schedule. Thank you.
And now that all the announcements are through, would you like to join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Would you please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We had a very nice surprise this summer. Can you imagine opening your mail and finding a check for $928.36? The Arizona Council of Professional Genealogists has disbanded, and they had some money in their treasury, and they looked around for, and to quote them, a worthy organization to give it to. Congratulate yourselves. And that money will be used to enhance our collection. Also, coming up, we don't know exactly when, the new chairs are on their way. They're coming from Charleston, I think, and we don't know when they're coming or what. We'll probably have 2 hours notice, but we have 23 volunteers who've been willing to unload and unpack. And if you're not in that list of volunteers, see me afterwards, because we can use more, especially people who can open huge packages. The highlight of October started way back in 1972 when this organization was formed. And the committee has worked long and hard and fun to plan a special anniversary event. It's a luncheon. It starts at 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock on October the 29th. The tickets are available here today. There is 3 choices of food, and we hope that every one of you will be here. It's at Unity of Sun City on Coggins Drive. If you don't know where that is, see one of us. We'll be happy to share it with you. One special announcement that isn't up there is that the library will be closed that afternoon, so you have to go to lunch. As usual, we need help. We have 29 aides, and that's not nearly enough. We need aides to monitor at the front desk. We are asking you to have a half day per month. Training is provided, and if you are interested at all, you should see Chris Palmer. Chris, where are you? Way in the back with her hand waving. I'll put her at the front door as you go out. And with that, we have break time coming up, believe it or not, before our guest speaker comes in. And we have the 50th anniversary tickets. We need to get those sold so that Fat Freddy's will know how much food to bring us. That's who's catering it. Don't forget your raffle tickets. Get your books. Sign up for your classes. And again, introduce yourself. Oh, the pigs have arrived. Can't do without the piggies. So make sure that you put some coins, change, dollar bills, $100 bills, whatever you have, because that's how we're paying for the 50th.
Somebody has already given me a check for $100 for the piggy banks.
Okay, with that, you have 15 minutes to do all those errands, and then we'll be back for a wonderful program. That went very smoothly.
Not too bad.
Yeah. A little ad-libbing from me, so.
I got one page left on your PowerPoint. Do you want that up there now?
What is it?
Yes.
Oh, that. Yeah, why don't we put it up there now?
Okay. One thing I'm going to tell you, you're going to see it. When we were doing the slides, I had you up in the corner, picture in picture, so they can see who's talking. Well, that's an advantage to having this, and I wanted to do that to show people.
Next time we'll dress up.
Well, I didn't zoom in.
Good.
Are you just going to introduce him?
As usual, there's a couple of reminders that I missed. One of them is a deadline for buying your tickets for the dinner, the celebration. Charlie, when's that deadline? October 21st. Don't miss Fat Freddy's food. And then Marilyn has an announcement for you.
Sorry, I guess I was supposed to have a thing for the slideshow. Anyway, this is about someone had come up to me and asked me about the trip to Salt Lake City. Our dates are March 19th to March 26th. I have March 19th to the 26th, isn't that what I said? March 19th to the 26th next year. And we have 7 deluxe double rooms available and 5 standard room. All of those have double beds. I have the prices. I just got those recently, just found the contract, or got the contract. And so I will be sending out some information on this. We still have lots of time. The deadline to have that in, all of that stuff reserved, is February 19th, a month ahead of time. So we still have time. It is going to be really pretty much all on you guys to figure out how you're going to be rooming together and who you're going with and calling up, and I will give you the contact person for you to arrange your own transportation. I'm not doing that, but I am going to arrange some things for us to do while we're up there. So I will be giving out some information on this. So, okay, it's coming.
Got it? Okay. Our program chairman, Barbara, is going to make her announcement.
Okay, our speaker today is Peggy Ash. She's going to be talking to us about document analysis. Peggy is the daughter of professional genealogists. She holds a certificate in genealogical research from Boston University. She's taken courses various places, including at GRIP, Genealogical Research Institute of Pittsburgh, and at what's known as SLIG, Salt Lake City Institute of Genealogy, along with some others. Prior to the pandemic, she was a missionary and trainer and sometimes class instructor at the Mesa Family Search Library. And she is currently working on accreditation as a professional genealogist. Peggy?
And at the Visitor Center now that we have next to the Mesa Temple, they have a family history center within the Visitor Center now, and they are teaching classes and things there, and I am starting to teach there now also. But they have, if any of you want to wander off that way some way, they got the families, a big area, beautiful building with lots of computers and classes and things there. And you have access to the Family Search Portal, which is a bonus. You have a lot of that here, I know, at your facility too, a lot of those options. Okay, let me see here. Okay, I'm going to be talking about document analysis, and I guess I had always wished that I could find a course that talked more about document analysis specifically, and I haven't found a whole lot that just talk about how you find out about a source. You find a source, and how do you find out more about that? And then really going through and working through all those pieces. So I started today with some of the ones I'm going to be covering today are some of the more basic ones that here in the US that we're going to run across. So the idea is just getting to know more from your sources. What is it that when I look at that source, is there more that I can get from it? So Genealogy Standards is a book by the Board for Certification of Genealogists. This is the second edition that I'm going from. There is a newer one, but it's mainly got some more DNA upgrades. So I'm going to be using that as kind of our guide, okay? So the first document we're going to be looking at today is the 1940 U.S. Census. Now, all research begins with an effective research question. Okay, so our research question for this particular document and a focus of a research project for this one is going to be, where was Henry Spikerman living in 1940? Now, I probably should have put a birth date with that, but Henry Spikerman living in 1940. So, step number 1, determine if the document is an original document. If not, find out if the original is available or find the best representation of the original document. So censuses are information-dense documents which differ from decade to decade, so explore a general overview of the document before focusing on the target individual. Hey, so we've got our census there. I'm sure you're all familiar with what censuses look like, especially the 1940. But we're going to start up in the left-hand corner here, and we're going to be going across. You just want to look. Could you bring my purse? I forget I'm blind now. so we have to. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to look up in the corner here, and you can see that we're coming across, it's in the state of Michigan, okay? County, Kent County, Grand Rapids City, it's saying no farms, there's a notation here. Ward 1, blocks 438 and 373, is that important? Well, it might be. It's talking about these columns at the top, what these columns are. So it's talking about the location, the household data, the name, the relation, the personal description, education, place of birth, various columns for these things, citizenship, and residence as of April 1st, 1935. Okay, then scooting over to that right-hand side where it's talking about the description for the columns. It's talking about the SD number, which is the supervisor's district, which is number 5. Then we've got our enumeration district, which is 86-41. It was enumerated on April 18th, 1940 by Francis R. Thome, and it's sheet number 62A. Now, is any of that significant to you? Okay, it can be very significant. Just this information up here. Okay, coming down is talking about employment and various, we're just coming out of the Depression, and so they're trying to figure out what kind of programs people are working with, and then their occupations, and then maybe what their salary is, and also if they're getting income from other places. So coming down this left-hand side here, something that's a little different for the 1940 census is that supplemental question. So there are a couple supplemental questions, and we always hope one of our people's there. My people never are, but we can always hope that they are. But we can see that there's a lot of activity going on in this particular section here that isn't always like that. So we're going to have to figure out what's going on right here. You can see this is where you've usually got the household or the family number, where it's usually coming consecutive numbers, 590, 591, 592, then we jump to 529, 530, 400, 593, I think, and then 23. Then we have some continueds going on here. So it's like, what is going on? So that's what we've got to figure out, right? And then we're going to go ahead and jump down to the bottom and look at that supplemental question, and you can see some of these questions that are being asked. You got the name, the father, the mother, the languages spoken. You can see there's some codes going on here also. And so we're going to have to figure out maybe what those codes are. Their mother tongue, their veteran status, Social Security. Okay, so Social Security is brand new. Moving over to the left or the right-hand side of those questions, for persons 14 years and older, It's going to be asking occupation, information, and then we've got some another codes here. You might want to figure out what's going on there. So we also want to look down here and see what's going on in the image set. That's going to give us some clues too, because when we look down here, we can see it's getting to the end of that image set, and that might be telling us something too. So now we're going to look at the target individuals. Okay, so we have got Henry Spikerman and his wife Myrtle. Now you tell me, you're familiar a little bit with the 1940 census, and we're on Ancestry, which is awesome, because then we have some of those helper titles up at the top here, column headings. So you tell me what you see. What can we learn from this census about Henry and his wife? Just shout it out. Age, okay, we see their age, yep. Okay, race, they're white. We can see that they are 73 and 61 years old. What was the other thing? Netherlands, he's from the Netherlands, she's from Michigan. Okay, he's naturalized. His citizenship status is naturalized. Okay, so they were in the same place in 1935. Well, what does that mean? Does it mean that? Wow, we're going to have to find out, huh? Okay. What else? See anything else? Oh, okay, we've got the house number over here. Okay, so 347 is the house number. And then we've got the street name. Okay. So that's giving a pretty good answer to what our question was, right? Was there anything else? We're going to talk about that. Good question. It's not on theirs, but it is on these others, and we're seeing quite a few right here. So we need to figure out what's going on. But I think somebody's mentioned this one right here. Okay, so they're renters. Okay. All right, so let's zoom over to the right-hand side of this. Now what are we learning? They're not employed. Okay, this is where the occupation would be. And over here at the top it says you would stand for unemployed, or not working, unemployed. Okay, so all of this has to do with that work information. And then we've got some codes going on here, XOXO. Does anybody know what that means? Hugs and kisses. Yeah, I like that too. Okay, so yeah, we got to figure out some things here, right? And then we've got over here weeks worked, 0. This is still, we've got some of that. But right here, this column, does anybody know what that means? This is income from other sources. And well, most of the stuff here is blank or nothing. It says yes right here. So that is something we might want to explore, is where he's getting that other income from. Okay, and so there's lodgers going on here. They could be lodgers. And so it'll be interesting to see, what's going on. So step 2, transcribe the document. For a census, extract the information on the target individuals. And I will just tell you, you will never get everything out of a document until you transcribe it, because you will see things that you never saw before, even though you thought you did. But for those of you who've done this, you just get so much more. And if you have brick walls or things that you're trying to break through, you have to start transcribing those documents if you want to get everything that you can out of them. So this one right here, I've gone ahead, I put the general information in here in the top. I've got the blocks, the date, the house number, the household number, the home value. The home value they rented for $20. It wasn't a farm. And this particular one, the nice thing about the 1940 census is what? The circle with the X in it. What does that mean? It's the informant, right? So on the 1940 census, but guess what? Of course, my family doesn't have that indicated, because of course, that's always my family. So I don't have that, so I don't know who is giving this information. Okay? Then I've got the enumerator, and I've got Henry, and it's saying he's the head of household, he's male, he's white, 73, married, he did not attend school, 7th grade education, oh, we missed that. And then born in the Netherlands, he was naturalized. In 1935, he lived in the same place, okay? He wasn't employed anywhere else, and he did have the income from other sources. Myrtle, she's a wife, she's female, she's white, she's age 61. She did not attend school, 8th grade education, born in Michigan. She again lived in the same place in 1935, and she did not have any employment or income from other sources. So step 3, evaluate the source and the information provided, and then question everything, okay? Okay. So, this is in your handout, and I got one that was a little less comprehensive from a course that I took. It was actually a citation course taught by Lisa Stokes. And she had a brief one there, and she made us go through, we had to write a source citation for a particular source, and she would mention the different source types that we had to use. And she had us go through, and I thought, you know, this is really valuable to go in and actually go through that checklist, because it makes you think through all of those things you need to be thinking through on that particular item. So on this particular census, we're going to go through this little checklist here. We're going to say, is the document faded, torn, or damaged in any way? No, it really wasn't. It looked fine. Is it handwritten or typed? Well, there's both, right? The enumerator was writing with handwriting, but the form was actually typed, so it's both. Is the handwriting consistent, or does it change? And we would have to go in and look and see, but it's the same enumerator. She has her name up there, and it was looking, as far as we could tell, like it was the same handwriting. Is the writing legible or illegible? It wasn't perfect, but it was fairly legible, okay? Is it written in a foreign tongue, or does it have difficult legal terminology? Well, no, I think we understood what it was asking for, and it wasn't in a foreign language. Are there spelling or grammar errors that make it difficult to understand? So is the enumerator, I have seen some enumerators who could not spell at all. Oh, terrible. And so then you're questioning just about everything they're doing. This one, you know, it didn't look like it was that bad. So are there, are there confusing abbreviations? Well, there were some abbreviations there, weren't there? So we're going to have to figure that out. Are there crossouts or insertions, and are they important? Well, there were a lot of things kind of looked like they were inserted there, but I don't know. Is it one of the original duplicate copies made at the time of the event, as in deeds or two-party legal documents? Sometimes they make 2 exact copies, and then they give them out to the different parties. Were there 2 copies? Well, as far as censuses go, up until 1900, there were duplicate copies, and they were left at there could be several copies left at different local levels, and then one going up to the federal government. And sometimes they got lazy, and the federal government has abbreviations for all the names, and the original, or those back in the state copy, might have the full name written out. So if you can access those other copies of censuses, it can be a good idea. I have done that with duplicate copies and found significant differences. So, and sometimes if it's a territorial census and they're trying to pad it, you'll see some very interesting things. So, is it the original or an image of an original? Okay, and if it is an image, which it is the image in color or black and white? We sure wish they were all in color, don't we? Because sometimes color makes a difference on a document. I can remember, this is when it goes, you just go, I'm so dumb. But there was a document that it was a kind of a census, and I found it was just a piece that somebody had snipped off something, full color. And I went to the family search library in Salt Lake, and I found the film that I figured that it was on, and I found found it because I was trying to figure out if it was actually where it was from. And so I was guessing, and so I went to this microfilm and looked it up, and I went, oh yeah, sure enough, but guess what? Microfilms are in black and white. So this was not where they got it. They got it someplace else, and it was in color. So you always want to find the color if you can, and I felt so dumb once. I thought, oh, hello, I know microfilms are in black and white. Okay, so is it clear? And then it was online because it was in color and they put it online someplace. So I didn't even have to go to the Family Search Library. So is it clear or is it blurry? Okay, sometimes it is blurry, and these microfilms, just so you know, after the 1900s, they destroyed the censuses. In the 1940s, they started microfilming them, and they just got rid of the censuses. So those microfilms, if they're blurry, that's all we've got. And some are. Or if there's pages missing. And I've come across that too. Does it represent the entire document, or are parts missing or unreadable? Okay, could it have been altered? Probably not. So we're probably good there. Is it a derivative work? No. We're not looking at a transcribed version, we're looking at that original. Is it an authored work? No. Is it a clerk's copy with all the handwriting, including signatures in the same handwriting, or is it an original with the signatures in different handwriting? And you have to watch for that, because if the signatures are in the same handwriting as the writing, it's a copy, and mistakes can be made in a copy. Okay? Is the ink, paper, pen, and penmanship appropriate for the time period? If it's not, if something's typed and it's supposed to be from the 19th or 1830s, you know it's not. Okay. Who created the document? Was it an agency, government, church, company, individual, etc., or was it a combination of these entities? Was it an official certificate or form that was taken from an original record? And sometimes they will send you a certificate that they've made all fancy and they've typed in the information, but there's an original someplace that has the original information on it, and you just don't even realize it because you're not thinking that could be possible. Was it an official certificate or form that was taken from the original record? Was it the scribe's work, or was the scribe's work consistent across documents? Were they diligent or careless? Were there spelling or other errors that might indicate competency? Okay, were the scribes, so we're going to have to look at this. Were the scribes or record keepers functioning in an official capacity within certain guidelines, and did they abide by these guidelines? Okay, we're going to have to figure that out. So here's our Frances Thome. She's our enumerator, and I always look up my enumerator. I want to know about my enumerator. So I went in and looked at her. She is 33 years old. She's a female. She was born in Michigan. That's good. She knows the area probably. And she is a wife. She's from Comstock, Kent, Michigan, same county, but not the same town. And she has an 8th grade education. So we're going to come in and we're going to notice some things here with this particular census. When we're looking at her, you can see that this particular census, although it's really, it looks pretty simple actually, doesn't it, compared to the one we just looked at? But it's actually much more blurry than the other one. These are not great images, they're just harder to read. And the enumerator didn't include the street numbers or the house numbers or the street names, so we have no idea what route she went. Sometimes you can figure out if they missed the house if you follow their route. And you go, oh, there's where it should have been, and they missed it. And you can tell that they missed it. You always have to go to the end to make sure they didn't pick it up later. But you can, sometimes it helps to follow along and see which way they went. Well, there's no way we can do that here because this enumerator didn't follow the instructions, didn't do it. Okay, and let's see. Yeah, you can see here, there's a lot of 8th grade educations going on here. 8th grade or less. So that was kind of, I know that my grandpa was from Michigan, this is his family, and 8th grade education was what he had. It was kind of standard, I think, for the time. He went to work after that. So, source analysis. Why was the document created? Was it for family or personal information? Was it required by law? Yes, it was for this one. Was the law created by federal, state, local, church, or some other entity? And ours is federal. What did the law require? Well, we're going to have to find out. Was the law followed? We're going to have to find out that too. Provenance, from whom or where was the document acquired? So this document, I got it on Ancestry, right? But where did it come from originally? Okay, the National Archives has it, but there were also census bureaus involved. So we've got some chain of commands that I had to go through to get where it is today in the National Archives, and different years it was different. So always check, but we're really grateful that we've got what we've got, and they didn't destroy it without the microfilms. And was the law followed? And okay, we're in Providence. Okay, where were other organizations, or were there other organizations or individuals who held it prior to the current ones? Was an online source used? What information does the online source provide about the document or its collection? Okay, we need to find out. What was the original repository? What information does the original repository provide about the document or its collection? We need to find that out. Are there more pages to the document? Sometimes people forget to look at the next page and they miss parts of the family, okay? Or land records and you miss the most important parts. Is the document part of a larger collection of similar items, or does it stand alone? So this one is a large collection. If it is from an image collection or book, were there explanatory pages at the beginning or end of the image set or book? Okay. A lot of times we forget to check at the beginning. If we're in city directories or anything else, always go to the beginning and see what it's saying. And you might realize that what you might think is just a church is going to show you the specific church or something that it's from, because it's showing you the image of the collection as they were imaging it, or the book, or the front of the book. Is the collection arranged in chronological or alphabetical order? If alphabetical, are there more family members with that surname in nearby documents? So anytime you got to flip pages to find out what kind of order it's in a lot of times, and if it's alphabetical, you're looking for those other names. So dates. How many dates are included in the document? Who provided or recorded the date or dates? Were the dates close to the event? How soon was the document recorded after the event? And was the document placed in chronological order? Does the date make sense and agree with other information in the document and across other documents? So this particular census has an enumeration date, right? And then it was based off of another date usually, unless they went out on that first day, okay? So for this particular one, it was April 1st, but there's also an enumeration date of April 8th. Does anybody know what they were enumerating on April 8th? It was, because I'm not going to show it to you, but it's going to allude to it in here. It was those that were in hotels and very transitory housing. They went from April 8th, because I think they did them last. Diligence of the enumerator. So we're going to look and see across this enumeration district how well she did. So we kind of flip back and forth when we're looking at these 44 images. And we see that she included the dates when she started and stopped each day. She included that. And that she included the house numbers with clear indications of transitions between the different street names as she moved from street to street. And she made this line across right here when she started on a new day or if she started on a new street. So that's pretty diligent. She's doing a pretty good job. Now I look down here on this particular one, and it says at the bottom of it, it says no enumeration on Douglas, all businesses. So she's explaining what's going on here and making it very clear what she's doing. The next line says start Scribner Avenue, thank you, Avenue on the next page, large apartment building. So that's giving me some good information there, isn't it? But I'm also seeing that she's being pretty careful, isn't she? So I'm really grateful for this enumerator compared to other entries in the area. So I realized that that was at the end of the enumeration district, and she's probably picking up people. So I decided I needed to go back to the beginning, or to where that apartment complex was originally enumerated. So I went back, and it's on image 7. Remember, wasn't it 41 or something like that originally that they were on for 347 Scribner? Well, now we're on 347 Scribner, and we've got all of these different people who are renting, and they've got all of these different renters, but look at how much they're paying. Do you remember how much my guy was paying? 20. So there's a question here. Why was he paying so much more than the others? Okay. Now we've got the ages and marital status, and so you're seeing it's kind of creating a community. You can go to the outside community. Right now I am staying within just that apartment complex, but you could branch out to streets and surrounding areas to see what exactly does the socioeconomic status look like, the ages, the occupations. What does it look like for this community? So I've got ages here, and you can see some are older, some are younger. It kind of varies. And we've got marital status, so we've got singles, married, divorced, and singles. And we've got educations, and so we've got this, we can see there's some high school there, but then we're down to 8th grade, 7th grade. So there's kind of a mix, but we're getting some more high schools in here, but again, down to 8th grade is not uncommon either. Then we've got birthplaces and 1935 residences. So we see a lot of Michigan, born in Michigan, but there's some others. Here's a Greece popping in here. And then we've got a lot of the same place going on here. Okay. Employment or hours worked right here. We do have the blank spaces for people who are working, and then the H is housework. So you're coming through here. You see that that's kind of a mix. These are the hours that they've worked. So some of them are working long hours, and some were unemployed. And then we've got their different occupations. We can kind of get a feel for what occupations they had. Not exactly wealthy. Wages and other income. Oh, this wants to move. So this is, they're not really making a lot of money here. Some are getting other income. So now we're going to talk about the informant. This is the person who provided the information. It's not the record keeper, not necessarily the person who wrote it down or recorded it, but it's the person who's giving the information. Is it known who provided that information? How well might they know the information provided? And because we don't know who provided it, we're kind of stuck. Were they an eyewitness to the events discussed? If the information provided is about a person other than the informant, are they related? If they are, how? Did they have a reason to give false information? Sometimes they did. Would they be considered reliable, unreliable, or is the reliability unknown? And then was a signature provided? And we know in censuses a lot of times the women just get younger and younger. Just happens. Information. Now that's talking about the content of the document. Would the various information provided be considered primary or first-hand knowledge? Would it be secondary, second-hand knowledge? Or can you tell, or is it unknown? Right now, we don't really know because we don't know who is giving the information to know if they had witnessed, say, the birth or whatever. the information looked pretty good for other information, so one of them was giving primary information, and the other would have been probably giving that secondary information if it was one of the two of them, which it looked like it would have had to have been. Is there anything that might lead you to question the information presented? Might there be a reason for bias or fraud? Could faulty memories play a role in the information provided? And you know, the further we get away from events, the shakier our memory gets. So sometimes people just misremember things. Something comes in and another date sticks in their head and takes that place, and it happens. Does the information provided agree with other information in the document or when correlated with other documents? Was there unexpected information? Are places or specific addresses provided? And here there are. How many people were mentioned? Who were they, and were they related? So we've got the two and their spouses. Were there witnesses? Were signatures provided? No. Were different events, or what different events were documented? And we have quite a few events going on here. When we know that they've got a marriage, and we know that we've got birth and birthplaces, right, and then where they were in 1935, and just a variety of things. Were occupations provided? And yes, and they didn't have one. Evidence. So evidence applies strictly to one question, such as when did someone die? So thing can only be evidence for something you're trying to prove, okay? So direct evidence means the document specifically lists information answering the question, even if it is incorrect. So the question was, where did they live? And they lived at that 347 Scribner in Rapid City, Kent, Michigan, right? So it's giving us very specific. Indirect, and we'll have one of those, is the answer to the question can be determined when combined with other information. And then negative information, or negative evidence, is the document doesn't record information that would be expected to appear there. So does everybody understand those differences there? If you don't, ask now. Okay, does the information agree with other correlating documents? If there are conflicts, can they be resolved? What new information was provided? And what new avenues of research does this document suggest? What new questions does this document create? Okay, so item 24 in genealogy standards says understanding meanings. Genealogists correctly understand the meaning of all legible words, phrases, and statements in the sources they consult. Their understanding includes the meaning for the source's time and place. So step 4, research the background information about the document. And my numbers probably don't match yours there, but that's okay. Ancestry, 1940 United States Federal Census. If you scroll down below the search fields here, when you're in that collection, the 1940 census, not in the general search, but the 1940 census collection, scroll down, and it's going to give information. And any collection, anything that you do a search on, you're going to want to do this, because if you're looking for birth records and it specifically says in this information that it doesn't cover the area that your person was in, there's no point in looking in this collection, right? So you're wasting your time. Make sure that you're reading through this information. It will save you time in the long run and give you valuable information. So it says that the 1940 census, I'll just give you some quick grabs here, it tallied the population of the country at 131,669,275 for the continental U.S. To facilitate the count, census planners divided the country into enumeration districts. They were geographic areas designed to allow a census taker or enumerator to visit every house in the district within a 2-week period. In rural areas, enumerators had a month. Enumerators were instructed to visit every house, building, tent, cabin, hut, or other place in which a person might live or stay, okay? Census enumerators wrote AB after names of people who belonged to the household but were absent on April 1st. Have any of you had that? I personally haven't seen that. Because the official cutoff for the census was 12:01 a.m. on April 1st, babies born later that day should not have been included, although sometimes they were because the enumerators had a soft heart. Okay? Residents of hotels, tourist or trailer camps, missions, and cheap one-night lodging houses or flop houses were enumerated based on where they spent the night on the 8th of April, 1940. Okay, so that's the one I was talking about. And then here's some interesting facts. The top 5 foreign countries listed as a birthplace were Italy, Germany, Russia, Poland, and England. Do any of you have people from there? New York was the most commonly listed birth state. How many of you go back to New York in some way? Oh, yeah. Just seems like everybody goes back to New York, Pennsylvania, or now we end up in California. The average household size enumerated in the 1940 census was 3.7 people. 2 women tied for the oldest person in the census. Their ages were 119. Mary and John were the most common given names appearing in the 1940 census. The top 5 surnames in the 1940 census were Smith, Johnson, Brown, Williams, and Jones. More than any of you fit in that category? Okay. More than 850,000 people reported living in hotels or similar housing. Okay, so the Family Search Wiki. You can get to it if you're in the collection on Family Search. Of course, Family Search is free. You can go in to how to use this collection, and it'll take you into the wiki. And this is just a very brief sampling. You can see kind of a listing here of what you can find out. Here it says the place of residence. Let's see. Yeah, April 1st. The basic enumeration unit was the county. The U.S. federal census has been taken at the beginning of every decade, beginning in 1790, to apportion the number of representatives a state could send to the House of Representatives. So that's one of its main reasons for being done. I love this. Usually reliable, depending on the knowledge of the informant and the care taken by the census enumerator. Okay. National Archives and Records Administration. Now this is where it's going to house originally now. And this is where everybody would have gotten it from, and that's where they just got it from for the 1950. How many of you got in? Well, we got to get in the night before because it was 9 o'clock here when it hit midnight on the East Coast. I was in at 9 o'clock, and I had my enumeration districts, and I had my people done within 15 minutes. I was so excited. How many of you did that? Anybody? A few of you did. Either then or the next day, right? Yeah, I was pretty excited. So, but it was going into the National Archives that we had to do it because they were the ones that had it first, and others were getting it indexed and getting things ready. And the National Archives already had kind of a quick automated index, but you didn't. But I used the enumeration districts. Okay, so this is what they have for the 1940 census. There's great links, great information in here. If it's a federal record, you need to go to the National Archives and just explore all of the different information that they have here. This particular one says, oh, is that what I want? Yes, selected list codes. Okay, so we're going to go to this. Remember all those codes? I can't stand it when I can't figure out what something is on something and I want to know what it means. So I'm going to go in and find out what those codes are. And this, it gave me some of the codes, a little clunky to use, but I could figure things out. So here are the codes being used, and I'm seeing that some of those codes were next to the school or their education level, so it's telling me what those codes were, the ages, and then the different races and what those abbreviations would mean, which would be very helpful. And then we've got the NA was the naturalized, the PA was the first papers, the AL would be alien, and the AMCIT would be American citizen born abroad. So if you see any of those abbreviations or anything like that, there's a place to find out what those mean. Let's go into the abridged instructions for the enumerator. This is a lot easier to weed through, just so you know. There's the complete ones here, but that can bog you down. But it's very fascinating reading, I think. So when we come in here, we see the information that explains the page number and the multiple instances of continued. Okay, so the households and individuals not at home at first visit, we go down to item 18 here. It says households and persons enumerated out of their regular order and for whom space has not been reserved on the population schedule, I guess with that AB, are to be enumerated on a separate sheet or sheets of the population schedule to be used for all entries made out of order. Okay, so then the sheets or sheets of the population schedule used for households and persons enumerated out of order is to be numbered 61, 62, and on. Okay, so it's starting with the 60s numbers if they got missed and they didn't fit earlier. And you can see here, sure enough, that's what it is, sheet 62A. Okay, so that was significant, wasn't it, now that we know that? Okay, and then for an individual enumerated out of, and it says, and it's to be placed following the schedules for persons enumerated in regular order and immediately in front of the schedules for persons enumerated as of April 8th. And who were those people? Okay, we know who those people are now, right? And those people started with the 80s. It says to refer to paragraph 11. So if you go back to paragraph 11, just on the page 2, it's telling you that the numbers are supposed to start with 81, okay? So it's the 80s. For an individual enumerated out of order, but who is a member of a household enumerated in a regular order, entered in column 3 on the line for the individual, the household visitation number of his household, followed by continued, should be there, okay? So those continued ones were the ones that just got missed and their household was enumerated earlier, and they should be a part of that, so it's noting they go with that particular household. So that's why we're seeing them out of order at the end there. Okay, so complete instructions to the enumerator. Here's your fascinating reading. Okay, so it's going through and it goes through, I thought it was really interesting to see what the enumerators were being told, and it says, okay, if somebody refuses to answer, you've got to carry your card and say, hey, I'm official, you know, and be nice and try to talk them into it. And then, but it's specifically saying, because I've heard people say, I'm sure that they were just all looking at the women to see what the other women's ages were next door, and then they were going to match it, you know? Well, apparently that wasn't supposed to be allowed. So information is strictly confidential. So it's making specific, say, don't let anybody see it. And it says, okay, then it's talking about untruthful replies. And if they can see something and they're like, this, we know that this is false, it says to put down what you believe to be true and not what they're saying, which I thought was interesting. And then it says, there's this obligation to secrecy as an enumerator, and if you violate that, you can be fined for not to exceed $1,000 or to be imprisoned not exceeding 2 years. So they were kind of trying to be serious about this, okay? So that's good to know. It's that, you know, those rumors that people said, well, I think they were just looking at the neighbors. Well, 1940, that wouldn't have applied unless, you know, the enumerator was not afraid of getting in trouble. So, anybody gone to the IPUMs before? And I don't know how you say this, but this is how I say it. It has very reader-friendly, user-friendly instructions. So we're going to go into the 1940 enumerator instructions. And so it just goes through and it lists the columns and things here, and the item numbers. And here it's doing the numbering the streets or the sheets of the enumeration. And then identification of persons furnishing information, and it's talking about making that X. If you find it necessary to obtain the information from a person who is not a member of the household, write the name of this person in the left-hand margin opposite the entries for the household, thus, information from John Brown, neighbor. Has anybody seen that before? I totally have never seen that, and I would love to see that, because I know it happened. And they were supposed to do it, but I've never not seen that. Okay, here we have column 11, age at last birthday, enter the age of the person at his last birthday before 1201. So here's that information again. But I find this easier to read through, and they've got just the stuff you need to know. Persons living in the same house in 1935. Okay, this is what we need to know. For all persons living in the same house, notice the difference? okay? For all persons who on April 1st, 1935 were living in the same house or structure as at present, you enter same house, and then you leave these columns blank. Persons living in the same place but a different house in 1935, okay, there's a difference now, isn't there? They weren't living in the same house, but they were living in the same town, okay? So for persons who on April 1st, 1935 were living in a different house but in the same city, town, or village, as at present, enter same place. So what does that say about my person? They moved. Very good. Okay, so then it's talking about that you there. Persons physically unable to work because of permanent disability, old age, or chronic illness. You're supposed to put that you. So they were older, and I'm assuming that's why. Maybe they were physically unable, and I don't know what those physical inabilities might have been. Now, you've seen these funky codes. We've got this column here, code A, with these different numbers. We've got code B with these different numbers, code C with these different numbers. What is that? Anybody figured that out before? Because I have to figure these things out. I can't leave it alone. So I'm going to go into the 1940 Census Sample Code Book. Now, just so you know, this slide deck is available on my blog, Peggy's PowerPoints. All of my material, handouts, slide decks, everything is always available on my blog. So if there's anything that needs to be updated, it will be there. And I generally put the date on it so you know it's been updated. And so the links that I have in this PowerPoint, if I don't have them in the handout, you can go to the slide deck and you can get them here. So come in here, and I'll just tell you, this was a little clunky to use. It's got a whole lot of pages, and I finally just had to come up to the top and do that Control F and put in the different things that the code might refer to, codes A and B. It was a little clunky, but I did find it. So you can see that it wasn't too difficult to figure out the school because it equaled the grade they were in. And then, but when you get to college and you get to higher numbers, it's a little different. Then you've got these codes were assigned for if you were married but the spouse is present, the spouse is absent, widowed, divorced, never married, or under 14, inappropriate for under 14. So that's what those codes meant. And then code C is the codes that were based on their place of birth, okay? So for the Netherlands, it was 08, and that's what we've got here, 08, okay? So One Step Web Pages by Stephen Morse. This makes it a whole lot easier. He has some great tools here. If you haven't been to his website, you gotta go. So we're gonna scroll down to the censuses, and we're gonna come into the deciphering the codes appended to the 1910 to the 1950 censuses in one step. So you zoom in here, and you've got, okay, for Henry, I just have to go, oh, column A, that's that code A. So I just put in the information, and I put in the 0 right here, and that 0 means head of family, either male or female, except head of a hotel, institution, etc. Okay, then we've got a 7 and an 8, so that's I put in the 7, and it says 7th grade for the highest greatest school completed. And then I've got Netherlands and an 08, and Michigan and a 62. So I already know that meant that 08 was in the Netherlands, but I don't know what 62 is yet. And then I've got XOXO, there's our hugs and kisses, and what does that mean? Same place. And then I put in the 7, which is the code for the U, next to the U here, and it says, oh, unable to work. No big mysteries here, nothing solved. It was kind of, you know, just restating the obvious here, but at least I know what they mean now. Okay, otherwise it would have driven me crazy. So Myrtle, we find out that her code for Michigan is 62. Okay, so 62 means Michigan. And then the others are what and then the number 1, she was the wife of the head of household. So note the information that we gleaned. So I add then my notes on here. You can see the blocks. So for those blocks, they want to see the enumeration district maps. The information is based off that date. Census alternates between these different streets on that particular enumeration page. The last number to be visited in the enumeration district was 593 here. And the enumerator is adding others that were missed along the later visits. Rent is higher than others in the complex for some reason. We might want to figure out. There's no indication of an informant. 8th grade education appears to be, and the enumerator had an 8th grade education, but she appears to be diligent in her recordings. We do have the calculated birth year, and it agrees with other information. And just, they are married, but I'm making a note, this is a second marriage. And they are naturalized, same house, so search city directories for the location prior to this. So these green things apply to the question that we're trying to answer, that we're looking for that proof, evidence. And so that's that information. Then these yellow ones, I'm noting, okay, we need to find, I need to do more research about this. So not the same house, we need to search the city directories for her and check to see what other sources he might be getting income from. Okay, step 5, correlate the information. So we've got in the Steve Morse site, you can go in and go to the enumeration district maps. They're available at a variety of different places. We can go to them here, it's pretty quick and easy. So this one links to the enumeration district maps on Ancestry. Here's this one for Grand Rapids. And I did that by going in and putting in the information that was provided for the 86-41. Okay, it's not 86 through 41, it's 86-41. And so there's the map. I zoom in and I see here's my 86-41. Here's 41 right here. Okay, and then I've got Scribner down here, and I've got these block numbers. This one's 438 and this one's 373, even though it's hard to make out when you start counting these numbers. The ones you can make out, that's what they are for sure. And then we've got Scribner, but we don't know where on Scribner. It's somewhere along here. But we are making note of Douglas Street here and Bridge Street here. Oh, and there's the river over here. And this is a really good landmark to keep track of. So the Library of Congress Sanborn Fire Insurance maps. Okay, so we've got Bridge Street up here. This is the 1950 map, so that's 10 years later. We can see that this is Bridge Street here. We've got Scribner, we've got Mount Vernon, and we've got Douglas. And then right here, as we zoom in, we see there's these flats, an apartment building. And there's 347, so you can see right here, here's 347 Melrose Flats. So that's where they are living. We can zoom right into the building that they're living in at that point in time when we have these great Sanborn Fire Insurance maps. So this is 1913. I want to make sure it's the same. So between 1913 and 1950, it's pretty much the same. So for that particular Melrose Flats, it's the same thing. Now, then we're going to go into Google Maps. And guess where? Do you see an apartment building here? Here's my Mount Vernon. Here's my Scribner Avenue, here's my Douglas, here's my bridge, and guess where my apartment building should be? So, I want to know when that had to have happened after 1950, right? So, and this is the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum right down over here. You want to go visit, you can say hi to my people on the freeway. But we've got, so I go in and I start looking, I'm like, okay, Wikipedia tells you everything, and so US Route 131, and it says, yeah, starting in the 1950s, they started to build that through there. So I'm going to compare and correlate with the other information, and I did it with the maps, the enumeration district, Sanborn Fire Insurance maps, Google. Let's find out about that same place, what's going on with that. So I go in, and the 1940 census for Grand Rapids, Kent County, Michigan, shows that Henry and Myrtle lived at the same place in 1935, which indicates it was the same city, but not the same residence. A search of city directories confirmed that they lived at 214 Morrison Southeast in 1936. 359 and a half Division A South in 1937 and 347 Scribner Avenue Northwest in 1940. Okay, those city directories are great. So they actually had 3 moves within that short time period. Step 6, resolve the inconsistencies, and there weren't any, and then assemble the conclusions. So the conclusion is, in 1940, Henry and Myrtle Spikerman lived at 347 Scribner Avenue Northwest in the Melrose Flats, Grand Rapids, Kent, Michigan, which is now part of US Highway 131. Okay, so I don't know how much time I've got. How much time do I have? Do we have time to do one more document? Yeah? Yes? No? Are we done, or are we good? Keep going? Oh, okay, I've got time. I don't know when I'm not sure how long I got. So, okay, we're going to do another document. So, second document, World War I draft registration. Okay, so the question that we're asking for this one is, and this is a pretty common document, right? Let's find out what we can about it, though. So when did Adolph Martin Apple, born the 29th of June, 1875, immigrate to the U.S.? No immigration documents, naturalization, ship records, none of that have been found yet. So step 1, determine if the document is an original document. If not, find out if the original is available or find the best representation of the original document. Sometimes that is a transcription because originals have been destroyed, but we have originals here. Now I want you to tell me what information you see on this document. What can you get? From some of the things that we've already talked about, what can you pull out here? Occupation? Machinist? Okay. Where he's living? Juniata, or I don't know how to say that shop. Oh no, that was where he's working. So he's permanent home address, 402 7th Avenue, Juniata, Blair, Pennsylvania. Okay. Whether he's okay, good. Whether he's a citizen or not, right here. U.S. citizen. And is he a citizen? Can you tell? Okay, I'm going to bring this. So he's 43 years old, and I'm going to bring, because so you brought this up, I'm going to show you. Yes, a lot of people miss this part right here, but it says citizen by father's naturalization before registrant's majority. What does that mean? Ah, that's what we need to find out, right? Very good. Good. He said before the age of 21. Was it before the age of 21? And what was the other one? Okay. So, anything else? Okay. Pennsylvania Railroad Company is his employer. This isn't the best handwriting, but it can get worse. You can kind of make it out. Okay, so we've got a name of the nearest relative right here, Myra Virginia Apple, and the address is the same. Okay, anything else? I love this stuff over here. Don't you love this? Tall, slender, and gray eyes, I believe. And then he has light-colored hair. And nothing noted about that would make him physically disqualified. Anything else? Very good. Do you notice anything about the signature? What? Yeah, yes. Why is that different? Okay, good point. Everything else isn't. Is the handwriting the same? No. So, what does that mean? Okay, so he didn't fill it out, or somebody else put his signature on there, right? Well, that's less likely as we go through here because they were supposed to sign it themselves. Okay, so we're going to assume that is his handwriting and that somebody else has filled this in. Step 2, transcribe the document. So we're going to go through, we're going to say the document is original. It's the registration card A4521. The serial number is 1395. Are those significant to any of you? Does that mean anything? Okay, his age is 43. His date of birth is the 29th of June, 1875. Does that age mean anything to you? Okay, he is pretty old for going into the war, isn't he? Okay, U.S. citizen. So he's a citizen by his father's naturalization before the registrant's majority. His occupation is a machinist at the PRR company in the Juanita shops. Does anybody know how to say that? I have not met anybody yet who knows how to say that. It's Juniata. It's in Pennsylvania. Juniata. I never know if it's Juanita. I don't know. Juniata. Juniata is a college?
No, there is a college in the town. It's a college,
Juniata College? Awesome. Okay, we're going with Juniata. Okay, that sounds good. Okay. Then we've got Myra, Virginia Apple. It's his nearest relative, and the address is 402 7th Avenue, Juniata, Blair, Pennsylvania. And it's the signature of A.M. Apple, or Adolph Martin. The register's report with the numbers 37-3-5, and it's C. And then he's tall, slender, eyes are gray, light colored hair, nothing noted for disabilities. The registrar is Samuel J. Long, and it was the 12th of September, 1918. Does that mean anything to any of you? Okay, it's the war. Okay, is it the beginning of the war? Okay, so local board for the division number 2, Blair County, state of Pennsylvania, Tyrone, Pennsylvania. Step 3, evaluate the source and the information provided. Question everything. Okay, so we're just going to quickly run through this. The document is looking pretty good. The writing's fairly legible. We could make out what was there. There's nothing that we didn't really understand, not terribly confusing. It was a black and white image, but it was a pretty good representation of it. Was it altered? Well, I don't know. Doesn't look like it. Is a derivative? No, it's not authored, not a clerk's copy. Yeah, it should be proper for the time period. It was by the government. And now the scribes' work. Now that is going to be interesting, where the scribes, and that might be something I want to look at, but I tell you, it's more difficult with these records because they put them in alphabetical order. And there were 3 registrations that are now in alphabetical order, and trying to keep that straight gets a little bit tricky. So you can go in, you have to drill down to that particular unit and then go in and see what's happening. Okay, and I did a little bit of exploring there, but it got really confusing really fast, so I backed out. But I hope to do more of that. So we've got, you guys picked it up, but I want to make sure that you picked up the different handwriting there, but you caught it. Okay, so then why was the document created? So it was in preparation for the war. It was by law. They had started the service, the draft, but no, there's the term. So yeah. It'll be here. I'll show it to you. From whom or where was the document acquired? Were there other organizations or individuals? Now, would somebody have reason to maybe forge something or lie in these? If they wanted to get out of it or if they wanted to get into it, right? So there could be some reasons. Now, going through the context of it, going back and forth, and because I'm curious to see what that other scribe looked like. You know, that handwriting, is he filling out other things, or did he just have somebody else fill it out for him? You know, friend, some other, who knows? That's what I'd want to find out, and I do not know that yet. But I have had to do handwriting analysis on, okay, so I have my grandma. She was a twin, and they did have birth certificates when she was born. And she always told everybody told her, as far as I know, she was the first twin. and that the second twin, who ended up being handicapped and special needs, was second because of problems at birth. Well, and that they were a day apart. They were born on different dates. The birth certificate, and there was a length of time between their births, and thus causing a problem with the second twin. Well, the birth certificates completely throw that out the window. They're born on the same day. One's right after midnight, one's 4 hours later, so there was a 4-hour gap, but they've got the twins flopped. And I had to go in and do handwriting analysis on the midwife who was filling it out, and because the signature of the person signing it and the person filling it out were different. And then I realized she hadn't even written her own signature, that somebody else had filled in her signature. So yeah, going over the years, I had to trace, it got pretty crazy. I still don't know exactly who was the first twin, or what day or what time they were born. But I do know that she didn't fill it out, the midwife. So the informant, it should have been him, right? Did they have a reason to give that false information? Might there be reason for bias or fraud? Are there places? Yes. Were there witnesses? There's just his signature provided. There was an occupation. We're going to have to look at that direct evidence. And then, are there questions? Well, there are some questions that arise from the handwriting, right? And then from the immigration. So, item 24, understand the meetings. So step 4, research background information about the document. So the Family Search Wiki, we're going to come in, we're going to scroll down, and it's going to tell us that the collection consists of an index and images of draft registration cards for World War I. 3 registrations were conducted between 1917 and 1918. The first was held on June 5th, 1917, for men between the ages of 21 and 31. The second was held on June 5th, 1918, for men who had turned 21 since the first registration. And the third was held on September 12th, 1918, for men between the ages of 18 and 45. Okay, so where does our person fall now? He's age 43. September 12th, 1918. So which registration was it? Third registration. Scrolling down, there are actually, they have sample images. The forms were different for the different registrations. So if you've seen some that don't look like this one, it's because it was a different registration. So they have some sample images here that you can look at the different ones. If you go into that, one of those, and you just start going back and forth between the images, they're alphabetical. Look for other people of that name, but also look at the different registrations, because they just put them all in one group and alphabetical. So nothing with numbers or anything, but by enumeration, or by their registration district. That's how they were grouped, and then alphabetically. So Ancestry. So here's their collection. We're going to come down, and they have a lot of great information in here, and they've got all of these different links that you can click on, and I'm not going to go through all of that, but you can do that. It's really fascinating reads. And then the World War I draft registration cards today, where they are, search tips, and then interesting facts. Because each registered male had to sign the draft card, you can see the actual signature of your relative. Okay, so that should be his signature. And then to access draft board registration maps and a variety of things, if you are have people in these particular locations, they are available. So federal government record, it's a federal government record, so where do we go? We go to NARA, or the National Archives and Record Administration. Okay, so, and I will tell you, using this little search field up here can be a little laborious, but Google knows everything. So you just Google NARA, or National Archives, and World War I draft registration cards, and it'll pop right up there, and you can click on that and get in really quick. I do that for all the collections. If I want the 1940 census in Ancestry or Family Search, I can find it, Google can find it a lot quicker than the database can find it. So just Google everything, even if it's within a site, and it's a lot faster. So, historical background on May 18th, 1970, oh, there it is. The Selective Service Act was passed. Okay, so that's what started all this. The registration cards consist of approximately 24 million cards of men who registered for the draft, about 23% of the population in 1918. That's why it's so incredibly awesome that we have that access to those records, because it covers so many people. It is important to note that not all of the men who registered for the draft actually served in the military, and not all men who served in the military registered for the draft. Moreover, these are not military service records. They end when an individual reports to the Army training camp. They contain no information about an individual's military service. Okay, the records are arranged alphabetically by state. The records include related records include classification lists of docket books maintained by the local board. So there's a variety of different things that would be associated with these cards that you might be able to find. More sources. Wikipedia, Selective Service Act of 1917. Google everything. And we're going to scroll down, and it says differences from previous drafts. Now they were not going to allow substitutes. In previous wars, they allowed substitutes. This was not going to happen here. Draft registration categories. So conscription was by class. The first candidates were to be drawn from Class 1. Members of each class below Class 1 were available only if the pool of all available and potential candidates in the class above it were exhausted. So that's how that worked. Some of you are going to be more familiar with this. So draft board officials were told to tear off. So if you have any African American research that you do, which I do, it's kind of nice to know different things about records that would apply to them. So draft board officials were told to tear off the lower left-hand corner of the selective service form of a black registrant. Okay, so that's that little corner down here. And I bet you never knew that before, huh? So the law. So we've got, these are the regulations. This is for the first, it's for the first one, the first registration. It says regulations number 2, but it is talking about the form for the first registration. And I couldn't find any of the other books. This was on Internet Archive, and it's fascinating to go in and find out how this all worked. As we look, it says the duties after registration day, and it's going in and telling them how they were supposed to number everything, how they were supposed to handle the whole procedures for everything, which is really interesting. But they also had copies of cards, and after the assignment of order numbers, the chief clerk will cause to be made one set of exact copies of all the cards. And then, so that there were copies. So, did the copies have the original signature on it? I don't know. I don't know how that worked. They may have gotten rid of those once the war ended and they sent everything up further. I don't know how that worked. Any of you know, let me know. Here are the selective service regulations. You've got 264 pages, and you can go through this whole thing. It's talking about, that whole process there. I didn't go through it. The numbers. Okay, so what do these numbers mean? It has taken me the longest time to figure out. Nobody wants to tell you this. It's not easy. But let's go in. This is the best place I could find for deciphering draft registration cards for genealogy World War I. We scroll down here and deciphering the numbering. So on the corners of each registration card are stamped or written a series of numbers. On the left is the serial number that was assigned as soon as they were registered. That is what would be considered their service number. Okay, that's what we would probably be more familiar with now. It could also be the number that the registrant was in line that day the cards were filled out. So the first registration, they actually had a registration number as well as these other numbers. But the later ones, they didn't do it that way. So it could also be the number that they came in. So that would be more with the first one. After each registration was completed, the local boards, the headquarters of the Selective Service in Washington, D.C., placed each of the serial numbers into a container. On July 20th, 1917, Secretary of War Newton Baker drew the first of 10,500 numbers from a bowl for the first registration. The first number drawn was number 258, which apparently in 1969 it was the same number, which is really weird. I don't know how that worked. And that applied to, I know, what is that applied to date, because in 1969, getting ready for Vietnam, they drew, that number had applied to a date. So everybody going into the service was from that birth date that lined up with that number of the year. If that makes sense. And I was reading through that going, wait, that number's the same. So I'm a little bit confused, a little bit wondering if they've got the information correct. So this was repeated until each serial number has an order number. The image, okay, so they're talking about this image, but our image is right here. So here's our serial or service number. And then this was the order number that would have been drawn out of that, basically, hat. Okay? Anybody familiar with that process? Military guys out there who know about the drawing? I mean, I've seen it in the newspapers. I had to go to the newspapers. It is not easy to find out stuff. The newspapers from that time period were far more helpful than anything else about telling you exactly how they did this registration process. And, you know, I find my grandpa and others of that time period listed in newspapers because their order number has been drawn. And so in certain orders, that means it tells them when they're going to have to report, if they're going to have to report, and all that stuff. So the first number represents the date on this, or the state on this number on the second page, which is this one right here. So these two just happen to both be Pennsylvania, and it's 37. And then the second digit represents the district board number, and the last number is the local board number. So those are just to keep it in line, and they know exactly where it goes. And then that C, can you guess what that C is? No. Which registration was it? Third. So if it has the C there, it's the third registration. So it would have either an A, a B, or C. So this one right here, you can see this registration form is different than the one I'm showing you right now. It's got these numbers coming down the side, and it's asking these questions in a form-like thing. That is the first registration. That is A. So citizenship and the law, as regarding our question, okay, parents naturalized before May 24th, 1934. You derive citizenship if either parent naturalized prior to your 21st birthday, he was right, and you held a green card at the time. You must have been a biological child, not adopted or a stepchild. Do you know that? Okay, so now this is where the indirect, we talked about direct evidence where it just says it right there, or you can calculate it, maybe like you can calculate a birth year from a census age, you know, that's kind of more direct. This is where your indirect evidence, this is what that would be. His parents naturalized before his 21st birthday, and he was a biological child, so we now know that. His 21st birthday was the 29th of June, 1896. It generally took at least 5 years to naturalize, making 1891 the earliest approximate year his father could have immigrated. So that's where we get our indirect evidence, where we're looking at other things, and from that we can indirectly find information. So step 5, correlate the information. So we're going to go to these censuses and anything else that might help us find out when they immigrated. In the 1900 census, it says he immigrated in 1887. He's been in the U.S. 13 years, so his age at immigration would be about 11 years. The 1925 New York census, he says he's been in the U.S. 38 years, which calculates to 1887. His citizenship is by his father's papers, and his age at immigration would have been about 11 years. So that's agreeing. And then in 1930 U.S. Census, his year of immigration, it says was 1887. It says he was naturalized. So that's all agreeing. Again, 11 years old. So Extracted transcription with annotations here. We do note that it was possibly filled out by another person since the signature doesn't match the rest of the handwriting. We do now know that there's an order number and a service number, and that we have the naturalization information for the father, our deductions, and then the same address was on the 1910 and 1920 census that we had on that particular draft registration, so that the addresses are lining up. Okay, so anything else here? The numbers are unique to that draft board, and it was the third registration, and it was held on the 12th of September for all of those men. So September 6th, or step 6, sorry, September 6th. We are in September. It's resolved inconsistencies. Although I had jumped to October yesterday, so I'm doing pretty good. Resolve inconsistencies. There are none. Everything pretty much lined up. So we're going to assemble conclusions. Adolph Martin Apple's World War I draft registration indicated that he immigrated before 1891. Despite a lack of immigration documents, the 1900 U.S. Census, the 1925 New York State Census, and the 1930 U.S. Census support an immigration year of 1887 for Adolph Martin Apple. So here's your quick bonus. Just because if you don't know this, I just think you need to know. Death certificates, okay? Question: how did baby Pons A, who died in Phoenix, Maricopa, Arizona in 1924, die? If I hadn't told you it was Maricopa and Phoenix, do you think you would have guessed that? Okay, because this is Maricopa right here. Phoenix. Baby Pons. Here's his date of birth. Okay. Yeah, I'm just about done. I can be done about 1. Okay, so it does say he's 1 month old. Okay, so I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, what do you think it says? And okay, you know what this is up here? Okay, it's a death code. Okay, if you see any of these numbers written across, that's a death code. So I just want you to be aware that you can go in, Wolfbane death codes is totally awesome. You can go in, we're looking for 1929, it was a 1924 death, so we'll go into 1929. Sometimes if it's close to that year turn, they may not have switched to the new one, so you might have to look at both. But we're gonna go in, look at that, and we're gonna go scroll down, it's number 159 to 159, and it says premature birth. Okay, so we can fill that in. And if you don't know how to make tables, there's a great YouTube video here that you can get a link for if you come into the slide deck. It's great for showing you how to make tables, because I just live with tables now, and my research log is just, I just love tables. So I have mine in a table as opposed to a spreadsheet. So enjoy the new discoveries you will make as you analyze your family history documents with new eyes. Okay? Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay. And there's my blog, just in case. Yeah. Back here and then here. Mm-hmm.
I often go through the thoughts of, well, who was home? I don't know if there's any value in that, but if father was employed and the mother wasn't.
Or if he's a farmer, he's likely not to be in the house, right? Right.
And so the person answered,
These two particular ones, for my example, they both could have been home. But for my example, they both could have been at home, so I wouldn't have known. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, you do have to think through that. And you look at the information to see who would have known that information and who could have given that. That detailed of information, the neighbors probably are not going to be giving. Somebody, probably one of the two of them did, they just didn't mark it. Yeah.
I have a question for you. I'm trying to find out about my family in Europe. Their name was changed at Ellis Island. Is there any way to find out their original name?
I know that they say there's more myth to the name changes at Ellis Island than truth, but the earlier census sometimes will show that earlier any documents closer to that time period, because sometimes they changed them after they got here, and they realized what Americanizing a name would be, and they would do it. And I've watched that on censuses happen. So go back as early as you can to those original ones. Do you know where they came from then in Europe, or you don't? And but you can't find records there, or you can? Because you don't know their name, right?
I was told by the aunt it was changed at Ellis Island, but they gave me different names, but I can't find them.
Well, search the name that you have first. If it sounds too American, it's probably been changed, but I would search it first just to make sure, because they say there's a lot of myth to that Ellis Island name change. Now, it wasn't Ellis Island that was doing it. It might have been them doing it, and they may have done it shortly thereafter. But yeah, so just go back as early as you can.
Sure. Peggy has promised to stay around and answer your questions individually. We have a couple of giveaways to give away. Then I know you're not leaving because you had a ticket.